Hey everybody, you're watching Roll Hunter, and in our last nickel hunt video, we looked through an epic stash of old nickel rolls, and we found some really great stuff. Today, we're going to finish off that hunt. We're going to see what else we have in store. I bet there's going to be some goodies. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is James and you're watching my channel Roll Hunter. In our last nickel hunt video, we started looking through a big lot of nickel rolls I got at face value from my new friend Tim, who is an antiques dealer. He sold them to me and I'm looking at them with you, and we found some really great stuff. I can't wait to see what else is in here. I'm pretty certain we're going to find some good stuff. Here's a little bit of a recap of what we found, and then we're just going to pick up right where we left off. We found silver war nickels. We found King George V. We found an extra water line. What could possibly be in the rest of these rolls? Let's find out. This is the second of those unmarked rolls, and they really are just an assortment of 40s, 50s, 60s, and some Americans in here you can see. So if I find anything really cool, I will definitely pull you in. Definitely a few good finds in that roll. There's a 1939, and this 1941 has some really interesting kind of toning, but it is in excellent shape. Check this out, except for one thing. There's a scratch on King George's face, but the detail is really good in the hair. That's otherwise a really good coin. I'm not exactly sure why it turned out this way. And then 1947 Maple Leaf. And then there was an older, pretty slick 1941 Jefferson nickel too. Next roll, we're going to have another Tomback nickel. I love these Tomback nickels. 1943 in pretty good condition. It's still got a fair amount of luster on it, actually. That's pretty cool. Next roll, and here's a pretty unexpected find. We're going to have a Buffalo nickel, and it looks like it's not going to have a date at all. It's pretty slick. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to figure out what this is. I'm going to just sort of do a bit of research and try to figure out if I can figure out the date range, maybe. I'll be right back. So here it is under the scope, and I don't think we're going to get a date off this at all, but I think I might know what this is. If I flip it over and we look down where 5 cents would be, I think it is possible that this might be a 1913, potentially, on raised ground. It's hard for me to tell. What do you think? And the reason I'm asking that is because typically this area here on the 1913 Type 1 or Variety 1 is all raised, and the first thing that goes is the 5 cents. It's up high, and here it kind of looks like this whole area is raised. Let me know what you think. I could be completely wrong. I've looked at a bunch of pictures, but I am no expert, so I'd love to know what you think. It almost looks like, could there be a mint mark there? It's hard to know. Some more oldies in that last roll. That's a 1940 out of Philadelphia, a 1940 Canadian, a 42, another 45, and this 1949, which I just set aside because it looks really nice. This could be, I think, in an EF. If I flip it over, you can see that it's not quite AU, but look at all of the detail. That would make it about a $5 a coin, which is pretty awesome. Highlights from the next roll, we got a whole stack of 1940s, a few 1946s. None of these have the die chip in the 6 that looks like an arrowhead, an interesting variety you can find. Not any of those. And another 1949. 10 rolls to go on that hunt, and just highlights from the last roll I just looked through. 3 1940s, a really rusty 44, a 46, a couple of 47 Maple Leaf, 147 without the Maple Leaf, and a chromium-plated steel 1952 King George VI. Highlights from the next roll, a 1954 Jefferson nickel, another 41, and a 45 Victory nickel. Just working my way through this roll, and we got a second-year King George VI, 1938. That's the first 38 we found. Just our second in the 30s. Actually, that's not true because we got a King George V in the 30s. So I guess this might be our third. And in this same roll, we got a pretty stunning looking 1944, at least for most of it. I can see some rust on the edge, but That's a gorgeous coin. We'll see what the other side looks like. Got a few little rust marks, but overall, much better condition than these 44s that we've been finding. That's a beauty. And speaking of beauties, just a few coins back, we've got a gorgeous 1967 Centennial commemorative. In that next roll, found a few cool things so far. A 42 Tomback with the beaver and a 43 V Tomback, a 47 Maple Leaf, and a 49. I found a couple really nice 1950s, but I wanted to show you this one over here. Speaking of beauties, this one is a pretty nice looking King George VI. It's got some circulation wear, but it's one of those chromium plated steel. It's a 1952. No rust, no real significant wear. Way better than we would normally see. That's a gorgeous one. And a couple coins behind it, another really lovely 1967. Very cool. Finding more older ones in this next roll, including a 1939. I see what looks like probably a 1940 peeking out back there. And some pretty rough Victory nickels as well. Lots of rust on those, but lots of cool oldies. And just a bit further back, another 1939 in that same roll. Very cool. And just a bit further back, another 1937. Next roll, and I got a gorgeous 1962, and when I flip it over, it's got a little bit of like smoky toning to it, but the fields are very clear and clean. Actually, a completely uncirculated 1962. We haven't found too many of these. I got a handful at the back here of what I've set aside as nicer coins, but this is just as nice as any of them. I'm going to set that one aside for sure. Probably flip it up. Even despite that toning, that kind of little bit of smoky haze to it, it is just a gorgeous 1962. And I didn't realize it, but right behind it is a 1959 that looks pretty good too. That's awesome. And in that roll, a couple pretty rough 30s, a 37 and a 39. Interestingly, if I flip this over, that one is pretty rough on that side. When I flip this one over, it is much, much nicer. Great detail. I think these were somehow stuck together and might have got wet or something, but that 1939 on the obverse looks pretty nice, if only the reverse was the same. Same roll, another gorgeous coin. This one's a 63. Very much like that 62. We ended up with a nice little run of dates in that roll, 37, 38, 39, a couple 40s, a couple 41s. And speaking of Tomback, with 5 rolls to go, we're going to at least get a few Tomback in this one. So those were a 42 with the beaver and a couple of 43s. And I love finding these because they're so hard to find coin roll hunting because they stand out so much from the rest of the nickels. People would tend to pull them out of interest. But there's a few more to add to my collection. Still in the same roll, and we're going to get another Buffalo nickel, and that's pretty awesome. In much better condition. I'm hoping we can get a date. I can see here there's no mint mark. We would see that below 5 cents. I'll flip it over. And that is a 1919. That is an early one. Let's throw this under the scope just to get a better look at that date. That is awesome. So got it under the scope there. We'll take a look on the screen. And that is a no doubter 1919. And that is pretty awesome. I think even in this condition, we've got a date on it. This being an over 100-year-old coin, this coin is still probably worth a few dollars, at least in this condition, maybe even a bit more than that. You can still see a whole bunch of the horn. That's another thing we tend to look at to kind of gauge the condition, but that is an awesome find. This roll's a bit of an odd one. We're finding lots of cool old stuff. There's a 1938 in pretty nice condition, but right behind it is a 1990. The one thing we'll want to check for is the bare belly. And so that 38 circulated, but pretty clean looking coin. A little bit of residue there, but that's a nice one for sure. And then this 1990, is it possibly a bare belly? It doesn't look like it. It actually looks like it's in pretty decent condition, but not sure why it's in here with all of the rest of these. Fourth last roll, we've got another King George V. This is a 1928, and it looks to be covered in, I don't know, some kind of residue. And I don't know if there's any way I can get that off without damaging the coin. I mean, that's obviously Seems pretty rough. It looks like it's got lots of detail. When I look at the leaves, they look very detailed and crisp. But is there any way to get this stuff off? I'm not sure. Maybe not. I don't know. It looks like it's been in a rusty, wet area with other coins. So it looks like we're going to come to a quicker conclusion than I had anticipated, because these last three full rolls, I pulled them out and I kind of looked at the ends there. They all appear to be completely full rolls of uncirculated 1959 nickels. And you can see here, if I pull this guy out, these are beautiful nickels. But what seems to be the case is that they've all been subject to the same kind of storage, of course, and environmental conditions. You can see the fields on this are pristine. This is definitely a mint state coin. However, you can see a little bit of kind of residue along the end. And if I look through some of these, we find that there are some that have that much worse than others. You can see it on that one. And here you go, you can see some kind of corrosion perhaps on that. What I think I'll do, and there's one that looks like it's really nice, I'm going to look through and see if there are any that are more or less pristine. I might flip those up and keep those as uncirculated examples. But otherwise, these ones that have any kind of sort of environmental damage, I'm not sure that they're going to carry any sort of a premium beyond just their nickel content. But I will look through. I'm going to carefully sort them out and see if I can find anything. And then otherwise, I'm going to tidy up this whole mess of a board here where I've been sorting them all out and separating them out by year. And we'll go through and review all of the best finds. A lot of this is just circulated nickels I'm going to roll up with by year and set them aside in my nickel stack. So I'll be back in a minute with a bit of a recap. I have organized everything here, and what a doozy of a hunt it was. And we found tons of stuff. A lot of the stuff from the very beginning were circulated, older nickels, 60s, 70s. I've already tubed them all up, or I should say rolled them up. I tend to just store them in a box, a nickel box, by year for no particular reason, because it's really just nickel content. There's really no numismatic value for most of those circulated coins. But I'll give you a little bit of a peek about what I do. So here are some of my nickel rolls in progress. I sort them all out by date, and in some cases, the 1977 you can see by variety. And when I get a full roll, I just seal it up and I open up another one or get another one ready and start to fill it until it's full. Once they're full, I put them in a box, and I'll show you that too. This will be a familiar sight. This is just a nickel box here, but this is where my full rolls go. So they're all labeled. So there's a full roll of 1969. Once I get 40 of them in a roll, I seal it up, I put it in here. Otherwise, they just, as I collect them, I'll put them in these rolls. So this is just the ones that are circulated and don't have significant value. Anything that is like a BU cent or nickel or anything like that, I tube up in different tubes where I keep them separated from all of just the nickel composed stuff. All right, we'll give a bit of a rundown. The ones just in the top corner there over here, these are just some better examples of some of the nickels that I found. I'm going to check against my collection. They might be really nice, and I might put them in a 2x2 flip or tube them up in my AU-BU rolls. At the top here, I've got a bunch of die varieties, 61, 62. So there's some 62s that might be double dates. There's 61s with die chips. There are some 1966s with die chips. I'm just going to take the best example. They're all fairly common. The 62 double date maybe less so, but the 61 with die chips, I got a whole stack of them there. So they're obviously very common. I'm going to see if I have one that is a really good example, that has a really good example of the die chip and is in better condition, and might set those aside. The rest, I'll probably just roll up with my nickel. Okay, well, starting over here, we got over 4 full rolls of 1959s. You saw them just at the end. 3 of them were completely uncirculated rolls, but had some level of environmental damage, some spotting or some kind of film on it. You can see some of them there. Again, I'm going to go through and pick out the best if I can find any that don't have any of that damage. And I might put those in my album, or I might put them in a flip. We got some 1958s looks like about 12 of those, no double dates, a stack of 1957s, no bug tails. I've scoped all of them. 1956, we got a bunch of 55s, 54s, 53s. I scoped every single one of those 1953s. Many of them are in fairly poor shape. They're, again, those chromium plated steel nickels, just like the 52s beside them. And they're subject to wear and rusting. So I've put the best ones on top here. But all of those 53s are the common variety. So that is the shoulder fold near maple leaf and the no shoulder fold far maple leaf. So none of the rare varieties. We got a really short stack of 51s, and just two, in fact. And there's a very uncommon high relief version, but obviously I didn't get too many 51s at all. Got a bunch of 1950s and a couple that were quite nice. If I move over here into the 40s, so we got a whole stack of 1949s, about 30 of them it appears, and notably no 1948s. That is a less common date. That's a key date in Canadian nickels, and we didn't get a single one of them. Perhaps not surprising, but I thought maybe in just rolls of nickels like this we might find a few. We didn't. Some 1947s, a short stack of 47s at the front, and then these two stacks are the 48 maple leaf. 1946, I scoped every one of those for a variety. There's one that has the appearance of an arrowhead in the 6. That's what it's called, the arrowhead variety. It's really just some kind of a dye anomaly. Didn't get any of those. Some of those 45 and 44 chromium plated steel Victory nickels. We got a few that are really nice and a lot that were pretty rusty, but cool finds nonetheless. We got a short stack of 1943 Tomback Victory nickels, always cool. And we got a short stack of 1942 Tombacks. And 42 is an interesting year because there are the 12-sided Tomback and the round-edged regular nickel variety. We got some of each. 1941s, so we're getting into the early George VI here. We got a bunch, and one of my favorites, I think, is this one at the front. It's got that antiqued look. If you've seen some of the more recent Royal Canadian Mint releases, or not too long ago, they did some silver coins with an antiqued finish, and they look much like that. And when you look at them, you think, it doesn't even look real. Would a coin really tone like that? Well, apparently they do, because that's a real 1941. We got a bunch of 1940s, and then this is where things get really exciting. In the 30s, we got a short stack. It looks like we got 4 1939s. We got a few 38s and a few 37s. A couple of them aren't too great. And then it gets even more exciting. We got 4 King George V, 2 1928s. This second one here I was able to clean up with just a little bit of water to get some of the gunk off, but you can see it must have been touching another coin that was rusty. These coins wouldn't typically rust, so this is residue from something else. We may or may not be able to get it off, and I don't really want to damage the coin any more than it is. 1929 and a 1934, all of those are fairly common. And then we got some other really exciting, cool stuff. Probably the find of the day, or one of them, is this 1964 extra waterline. It's the second one I've ever found. It's getting fuzzy, so I'll pick it up and we'll take a little bit of a look here. There we go. We can see that extra waterline even with the naked eye, and we'll just take one more glance at that bad boy under the scope. And there's our closer look. It's a no-doubter, absolutely. Not in great condition, that's okay. It still has that die crack here that makes it appear as though there's an extra waterline by the designer and his initials. It's just one that apparently is out there. You can still potentially find them, and that is an awesome find. And through those rolls of nickels, we probably got a few full rolls of US nickels from 64 into the 70s, but these ones here, these two stacks, we got 19 here that are 40s and 50s, and I tend to separate those ones out anyway and keep them. The rest I trade with my buddy Brent, who will take them and spend them in the States, and I'll buy his silver with whatever I get. And then some more cool stuff here. We got 2 buffalo nickels and 3 silver war nickels, and they're all pretty much worse for wear, but that's pretty typical for those sorts of coins. But these buffalo nickels, that one on the left is a 1919 Philadelphia, which is incredibly cool, really old, over 100 years old. And I'm going to flip these two over because I want to get your opinion on this. As I said earlier, I think the one on the right, the dateless one, I think that's a 1913 raised ground. You can see where it would have said 5 cents. On the left, later coins, they recessed that area, and even when a coin is worn, you can clearly read 5 cents and probably see the mint mark. The one on the right, the 1913s, that first year Buffalo nickel, it was a raised ground. The 5 cents was the high point on the coin, and it would have worn off, and I don't see any evidence really of a recessed area. Let me know what you think. Am I right? Is that a 1913? Can we make that assumption? I hope so. I think so. We'll see. But it's just cool anyway to find buffalo nickels here in Canada. Well, that was, as I said, a doozy of a nickel roll hunt. I really hope you enjoyed looking at a whole whack of older nickels and with some surprise finds too. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, Roll Hunter, where sometimes we do collection searches, often coin roll hunting, subscribe now. I'd really appreciate it. You'll find out when my next videos are coming out. And if you've already subscribed, then just like the video so you'll see more of my content. That would be great. I really want to thank each and every one of you for watching, especially right to the end. That's incredible. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. We'll see you again next time. The sponsors of today's video are Lighthouse Canada and the Charlton Press. Lighthouse Canada is the leading supplier of high-quality numismatic supplies in Canada, and the Charlton Press is the leading publisher of coin and paper money catalogs and price guides for Canadian collectors. Go check out their online stores today and use the exclusive discount code CRH20 for 20% off all your purchases.